Hello to all, and I would like to welcome you to the rollout of Breakthrough Patching, the new framework of collaboration communication between the ISR and account executive. My name is Luther Rayner, and today I will be taking you through a presentation along with Gary Ulrich, another area sales manager from the Illinois District, and Ruben Valdez, the inside sales supervisor for the Illinois District. As many of you know, we've come a long way as regards to building a good relationship between the ISR and AE for collaboration in the patch. However, there is still room for improvement, and the goal is still to reach breakthrough growth. So when we focus on communication, a large part of it is a rhythm. A rhythm is defined as a communication where it is regular, repeated, there's a pattern. This really paints a picture of how communication should be between the inside sales rep and their account executive. Now, in past years, I, along with other growth contributing leaders, believe that giving the autonomy in the patch to the ISR and AE for collaboration was really the best way to allow them to operate, not creating some one-size-fits-all structure that would stifle creativity with a one-size-fits-all approach. However, we've gotten feedback from the field, that would be both ISRs and account executives, that suggests that this approach is not the best one. With the help of many of the POL managers here in the Illinois District, a survey was developed and sent out to both account executives and ISRs. And questions were asked in regards to the partnership and how it could be improved so that barriers can be removed and we can grow. The reoccurring theme, surprisingly, from both was that the expectations were not clear and consistent, and they wanted to know how they operate in the relationship. So this really became the central focus and need for the framework of breakthrough patching. Now I'm going to turn it over to Gary Ulrich, and he's going to take us through an executive summary.
All right, good deal. Thank you, Luther, for the introduction. I appreciate that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a brief summary level view of breakthrough patching. The goal is to move from a behavioral approach that's tactical in nature, which is that day-to-day check the box type of conversations that we have. Did you follow up on the CCM, the SLIM? What opportunities are we working? We want to move that conversation to a more strategic framework or an approach that is going to foster and create that shared purpose, which is to grow the patch of land. Now, that framework includes a communication process, rhythm meetings, modeling the behavior, as well as a job aid. Now, our weekly meetings are going to be established and scheduled and not ad hoc. And what I mean by ad hoc is when you're driving down the road on the hands-free, you're having some conversation, but you have a real inability to document what the conversation was, what the commitments were, and what some of the next steps were, which ultimately takes away from the effectiveness in the patch. The next piece, which is the modeling piece, on the other hand, allows us to learn from each other. So the managers, the coaches, the team members can all draw from and learn from experiences inside and outside of UPS. And then lastly, the job aid is going to provide examples of what good looks like. So things like best practices, master operating plans, processes and frameworks that have worked well for other teams, and then ultimately what's working in our patch and what's not working so that we can retool and become better. Ultimately, that job aid is going to be a dynamic approach that's going to adjust as we all learn together. Deploying this process will create momentum through rhythm, and the end game is growth, ownership, and performance. And that's going to maximize our performance in the patch and our SIP for all. So with that said, I'm going to move forward to the communication process, and we're going to talk a little bit of detail on why it's so critical to the collaboration and the success. You can see the theme of momentum through rhythm is established by a consistent weekly meeting, which is documented via Outlook, Teams, Sales Impact, and any other tools that we have available to us. Now, there are some key items that need to be discussed. Commitments that we've made in that previous week's meeting. Were they completed? Were they not completed? Are there next steps that need to transact in order to help us move forward with our strategy in the patch of land? The next piece is to talk about gap analysis. And when I say gap analysis, I mean right down to the product level. So from an overall revenue perspective, you could be 101% effective in your patch of land. However, when you dig into the products, international as an example, you may be 92% effective in international, and that could be something as little as $200 a day. The idea between that gap analysis and these weekly rhythm meetings is to review where we're at, find out where our shortfalls, and prioritize and focus on the opportunities that are going to help us shore up that gap. And that helps us execute well in the patch. Another component that we're going to talk about in a weekly rhythm meeting is the validation of new wins. And did the customer give us the revenue that they committed to? And we all have access to CRG. It's a fantastic tool that allows us to take a look at, did we get what we traded for by using our SSN skills? And that's an area that we have to look at a regular basis, and it ultimately allows us to make sure that we're retaining our customers, which brings me into the next point, is conversations, strategic conversations about our top targets. What retention activities do we have in place? We all know that churn rates vary in different patches of land, but ultimately that impacts sales. So retention is that many less packages that we need to onboard by our selling activities. So what it all rolls down to is the divide and conquer section. And when I say that, I'll say it again, divide and conquer for the week's activity. And I want to provide a quick sample, an example of a hit rate. We know that we collaborate well. We know that we communicate well between the ISR and the POL ranks. But if we're working the same 10 opportunities and our hit rate is a 30 to 40% hit rate, one could surmise that we'll win 3 to 4 out of 10 accounts. The concept of divide and conquer and utilizing these weekly rhythm meetings is to find out, okay, where do we need to collaborate and where do we need to divide up the work so that we can pursue 10 accounts each. Now, our hit rate will stay at that 30 to 40% rate, but ultimately we're now talking about winning 6 or 8 accounts, and that's going to double the production in the patch of land. There's always going to be an overlap where there may be a customer-facing visit needed or some behind-the-scenes work, but the concept of creating that momentum through rhythm and collaboration is where it all comes together and allows us to divide and conquer effectively. So with that said, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ruben to take the rest of the slide through.
Gary, thank you for that excellent example of divide and conquer. In every competitive environment, top-performing teams divide and conquer. Top-performing teams also have a sense of shared responsibility and shared leadership. That leadership is transferred and fluid within the team for the purpose of achieving their goals. So who must answer the next question? Who will be responsible for which tasks for the coming week? I would suggest to you that every team member must answer these questions for themselves or with the help of others to be an effective team. Setting aside time every week to answer these questions will enable our teams to translate their ideas into smart goals faster. Not just good intentions, but real strategies that lead to winning proposals. Another characteristic of top-performing teams is that they consistently capitalize on opportunities. Therefore, these are the questions and the steps that would follow. Agree upon agenda for the next meeting. What are the expectation pieces of the follow-up that each person will come prepared with the next meeting? Update territory strategy in the existing systems. Finally, we must find opportunities. We must demonstrate openness and trust to and provide formative feedback from our peers. Lastly, we must promote creativity and innovation by leveraging the knowledge and experience of every team member. Finding opportunities to offer coaching and share what is working and what needs further refinement. Now I'll hand it back over to Luther, who will share a collaboration success story.
Thank you, Ruben. This flow really does highlight a rhythm and discussion for discussion, and it will help establish a cadence and a tempo. And this is a structured focus for conversation. As many of you know, we have already began to roll out breakthrough patching here in the Illinois district. And I have a success story that I would like to share with you. I recently had a newly promoted account executive from inside sales come here to the Illinois district. And I assumed that she would be great at establishing a relationship with her ISR, being that she had recently come from the role and she knew really the best of both jobs and what the task should be. However, after some time, she came to me and let me know that she needed my help in establishing a clear-cut communication between her and her ISR. She wanted to know how they should operate. So what we did was we took a look at some of the discussion topics. We found out what her gap was on one of the shortfalls in her territory. Focusing on that, which was international export, we began to formulate a plan with her and her ISR on how they would attack this shortfall or gap in their territory. With the help of marketing, they were able to establish 40 international leads, and based on this, they divided them between the ISR and the account executive based on the size of the projected opportunity. This is where they both agreed to an agenda for the next meeting, what each person would do, and how they would prepare for the next meeting. They laid out the framework for how they would operate together. And to this date, One Win has validated at over $100,000 a year of international export. This process truly drove the greater success, not only the success of the relationship between the AE and ISR, but they grew their patch. The divide and conquer really worked in this instance. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Ruben for Watch, Win, and Recover.
Thank you, Luther. The opportunity for collaboration within every patch today is enormous. The focus of this slide is to emphasize the importance of the overarching strategy and the enduring values that will lead us forward to new heights. As the green heading suggests, we must take a holistic approach to achieve breakthrough growth with a forward view of our performance. Win, Watch, Recover is traditional territory management. Win, Watch, Recover is our long-term growth strategy that's focused on specific sales activities and desired business outcomes. Jim Casey once said that determined people make conditions. They do not allow themselves to be victims of them. Determined people working together can do anything. As I thought about collaboration within our patch, I realized it comes down to a one-to-one relationship between one POL and one ISR. My goal is to support our teams to realize their strengths and potential by working within the parameters we've outlined in this presentation. Parameters like partnership. There are no subordinate members in our teams, meaning that every team member has an important role. I'm reminded of a proverb that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. If you want to run further, run together. Our partnership legacy is something special here at UPS, but it's not exclusively defined in a book or a policy. It's defined by us, our attitudes, our words, and our actions. Very simply, we must treat our partners the way we want to be treated. Weekly conference calls and open and honest communication will be the catalyst to greater coordination, collaboration, and as Gary said earlier, compensation. To achieve this breakthrough patching, every team member must know their role and the contributions they must make to the patch to achieve breakthrough results. Ownership and excellence in execution. That's what it'll take to be a championship team in 2015. In summary, effective collaboration will be a force multiplier by mobilizing and aligning our teams to cultivate growth within every segment of the patch. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Gary.
Thank you, Ruben. So we've told our sales teams to go out and win, but we didn't provide an outline for consistency. The plan is to create a weekly rhythm meeting with the ISR and the AE. In addition, we expect the GCL to participate in a monthly rhythm meeting to provide coaching, guidance, and most importantly, to remove the barriers to success, the things that get in your way. Now, the weekly meeting between the ISR and the AE is an Outlook, Teams calendar-driven meeting to collaborate in a strategic manner. Some of the topics that would be discussed: what did we commit to the last time we spoke? Did we accomplish those tasks? If not, what will we do? What worked and what didn't work? We don't want to reinvent the wheel, and that's one of the things that I think is the biggest message here is when we talk about collaboration, it's just not one ISR, one POL, and one manager. It's if we find something that works, we share it with all. And we all have access to each other, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We'll talk about gap analysis by product level, like I gave the example in the earlier slide. We'll talk about what accounts we're working on and how we're documenting them in sales impact. We'll talk about what we won, if it's validating. It's very, very important between the teams to celebrate the successes that we have out there. And then one of the other, final things is dividing and conquer. It's going to allow us to impact the patch. We're all going to get stronger together. So, of course, you'll have task level things, who's covering vacations, who's going to pick up this ECM and those types of things. But ultimately, the whole role of this rhythm meeting and modeling the behavior comes down to coaching. We need to learn from each other. We need to have an open mind to candid feedback. Candid feedback can sting sometimes, but ultimately we all have these different experiences, whether it's inside or outside of UPS, and some folks have a great deal of experience at other companies that we can all draw from. The key is to strive for a constant skills improvement so that we can have success in the patch. That's how we create momentum through rhythm. So the goal is not to take a one-size-fits-all approach to each patch of land, as Luther had mentioned in the opening. With that said, we did receive feedback from a survey that was sent to both the POLs and the ISRs with questions regarding how can the partnership be improved, what types of barriers exist, and so on. Now, the reoccurring theme from both parties that were surveyed was that the expectations were not clear and they weren't consistent, and that they wanted to know how the relationship should operate. That's why the theme of breakthrough patching has come about. The objective of this project is to provide a framework for the POL and the ISR relationship so that they can work together in a more collaborative manner, all while keeping the focus on their shared purpose, growing the patch of land. Now, the job aid you see on the screen is a simple tool to provide more specific direction. It's still intended to leave room for strategy development that works for the unique needs of the patch depending on the territory. It's going to help move these discussions away from open items and to-do tasks to what needs to be done to cultivate the opportunities and ultimately bring them through to producing quickly, which is a shift in behavior from tactical to strategic. Now, it's intended to be dynamic. It will change as we uncover best practices and successes that are repeatable, and it should be shared during the monthly GCL rhythm meetings, and the job aid will likely have items removed if they're not effective, but the key here is collaboration and communication to elevate the performance and success in the patch of land, all while maximizing our SIP. So with that said, I'll turn it back over to Luther for a brief wrap-up and open it up to comments and questions. Luther?
Thank you, Gary. First, I would like to thank everyone for their attention and participation up to this point of the call. I want to encourage you all to adopt this process early and provide feedback for improvement along the way. Here in the Illinois District, we have the I-CARE model. And what that is I, personal relationship, C, communication, A, accountability, R, relationships, and E, engagement. And there should be no team left behind. And there will be no team left behind on this collaboration between our sales team and inside sales, which is an extension of the Illinois District. This methodology has proved to be the cornerstone for cross-functional departmental success here in the Illinois District. We hope that you will take the concept of breakthrough patching to the next level as a cross-functional team to break down the barriers and achieve breakthrough growth. With that said, I'll open it up to comments and questions. And again, thank you for your time.